What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and you know how excited I get for the beginning of every single month because we have some of my absolute favorite content right out of the gate. And in this video today, I'm going to share with you a couple things that I'm going to be either spending my money on or at least keeping a very close eye on with the intent of possibly spending some money on here in the wonderful month of September. And then, of course, not long after that, we're going to have our grading card video where we get the actual grading data from PSA, SGC, CGC, Beckett. We do a whole deep dive into that. We've been doing it for over a year now. It's really insightful. And then, of course, we get the top 10 cards that exchanged hands the most on TCG Player, and you know how excited I get about that. You know, any type of macro level data, those big cards that are changing hands on TCG Player, grading card data, anything to give me an idea of what's going on in the hobby at the macro level, I get super excited about. But of course, I always kick off with what I'm spending my money on. Now, this is not an endorsement for you to do the same, but I always like to give you some insights into kind of how my Pokemon brain works and what I'm looking for and what I'm spending money on. And obviously, if I'm spending money on it, I feel, you know, somewhat confident that it's going to give me some solid returns in the long run. So this is a really fun video series, and I always enjoy starting off with a little bit of a quote. And I always try and have these quotes tie into the theme of the video, and this quote ties in perfectly to it. So, and I loved this when I was reading it. Now, choppy markets are where you give back some of your recent gains, and smooth and trending markets are where you make those gains. You know, the less you can do of the former, the greater your benefit will be from the latter. And that makes a lot of sense here in the Pokemon space because we see these moments of FOMO here in the Pokemon space where people just they feel like the sky is falling and time is running out, even though there is definitely not any time clock or punch card on any of this, and people rush into the market, prices go up, and then subsequently the prices come back down on the backside. And we have seen that through multiple different eras as of now, and that is one of the things we're going to be talking about because for the first time in a while you're going to see some Sword and Shield stuff back on my buy list. And it takes a lot for me to do that. I'm the king of saying buy what will go up, not what has gone up. But when I start to look at how some of the other stuff like Sun and Moon and XY have been performing, I'm seeing a lot of indicators that get me really fired up. So with that out of the way, listen, we do a ton of work here on the PikiPikaPapa channel, so if that gets you excited, hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, and if you have questions or comments, drop them down below. We got a small channel here. Those three small things go a long way in helping me out, and I really appreciate it. So with all of that said, let's get into the very first example of what I'm talking about here on slide 1. So I have two cards from Sword and Shield era here, and I have not had singles cards on this video series in quite a while, and I certainly haven't had any Sword and Shield single cards on here in a while. But the reason I am doing this is because, as I said, we look at how Sword and Shield cards have performed month over month, every single month. We've been doing that for a year now. We look at the top 20 singles cards, and we are starting to see that they went up significantly. They've been coming down the last couple months, but what I'm beginning to see, if you look at these price graphs in the lower right-hand corner, is now, since I look at this all the time, I'm starting to see a lot of these awesome Sword and Shield alt art cards start to level off a little bit. Okay, we're starting to see a little bit of a flattening, and we always refer to those as support lines, right? Like the card is on free fall, and then all of a sudden it reaches a certain price point where the hobby just scoops it up at a certain price. Like no matter what you're talking about, most things get to a certain price in the terms of coming down where people will just end up buying it. I do it all the time. If I'm at Home Depot, I walk by a sale aisle and I might not need that brand new drill, but if it's $15, I'm like, heck, I'm gonna buy it. It's only 15 bucks, right? It's great marketing on their part and absolutely terrible consumer spending on my part, but that's how it works, right? And we're starting to see some of these cards that have been in free fall ever since the Sword and Shield pop start to level off a little bit. And the reason I have the Sun and Moon top 20 singles card graph there on the left-hand side is because that's a great illustration of a different era that went through a very similar pattern, right? If you remember in the middle of 2023, even in the beginning of 2023, Sun and Moon singles were on fire. They were going all the way up. It was just crazy how some of them were moving from a price perspective. And then we saw it start to come down. Now, not the aggressive immediate price drop that we saw in the Sword and Shield space, where we have seen over the last couple months. It was a bit more cyclical. It came down a bit more, you know, over time versus just these last 2 months. But what has happened since is we have seen these cards start to slowly appreciate. And if you saw on Friday, I did a video on the XY era, and you saw that those top 20 singles cards did the exact same thing. They were up, they came down, and then they have just been on this steady eddy upward in the right trend ever since. And when I think about Sword and Shield has some of the best artwork in recent memory, if not the best artwork in recent memory. It is a legendary era. People are going to remember it for eons because of everything that happened around it. And when I look at these two cards, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for big name Pokemon from big sets, right? Both of these are from Fusion Strike. Obviously, Mew, Celebi, like these are two big name Pokemon cards. And then when I look at it here, you see that they're really starting to flatten out a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to pop off overnight. It doesn't mean that in the next 2 to 3 months you can expect these things to go through the same spike that we did, in the last couple months, but it does tell me that the market is starting to find some really good support lines. So what I go through from this is this. I look for big name Pokemons, I look for big sets, I look for epic artwork, and these check all of those boxes. So I am not pulling the trigger yet, but I am paying very, very close attention to a ton of these awesome Sword and Shield single cards that were absolutely overbought and then subsequently oversold, and now we're starting to see them flatten out a little bit. So that is why these are on the list, and that is something I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on here in the foreseeable future. Now, the next thing, again, still in the Sword and Shield era, and this is a little bit just for my personal collection, but I also think it's a great investment piece, is Astral Radiance booster boxes. Now, I will admit, it sold out on the Pokemon Center long before I thought it would, and so I didn't have an opportunity to get as many of these as I wanted, and so I've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for a decent buying opportunity, and I think this is one of them. Now, it is still below the 170 mark. If you hunt and peck on eBay, you can find it for a little bit cheaper than that, and I know that's not buying what has gone up, it's not buying what will go up, right? But I still think this has a long way to run. And I have the graph in the bottom left-hand corner, and if you didn't watch our video on it, it's not gonna make a lot of sense. But what we did was we took the 12 booster boxes from XY, Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield era, and I have those booster box prices going all the way back 3 years. So what we did was we looked at how the top 20 singles cards, how those have performed, and we did some correlation work compared to how the booster boxes have moved. Now, it was far too in-depth, far too mathematical for me to walk through all of that in this video again, but if you want to check it out, it's a really cool view. Go back and watch it again. But the net of all of that was we found that booster box growth had the closest and highest correlation to the average of the top 20 cards, and actually the closest correlation was the middle 16. So if you take out the top 2 of the top 20 cards and the bottom 2 of the top 20 cards, that middle 16 group, that price versus the booster box price was actually what gave us the tightest correlation to booster box growth. And when you look at all of that, Astral Radiance is second only to Evolving Skies right now. So Astral Radiance has an amazing lineup of cards. I mean, if you look at it top to bottom, there's just some incredible artwork in there, and the booster boxes come down a little bit. I'm not saying that it's going to stay down. I certainly think it's going to bounce, but I do think this is a really interesting opportunity. And again, we looked at 36 different booster boxes and their prices over 3 years. So things can always change in the future, but this is pretty buttoned up information right here that those middle 16 cards and at least the top 20 are big drivers of overall growth when you're thinking about your buying points and all of that. So Astral Radiance is on my list. I think it's a cool set to begin with, and I don't have as much as I wanted, so I might be picking up a couple more of them this month as well. Next one right here, and you're going to get a whole video from me on Surging Sparks, but I am so irrationally excited for Surging Sparks, I can't even put words into it. Now, the reason I have this on here is because I have already pre-ordered my Elite Trainer boxes from the Pokemon Center. I don't know if it will sell out. Twilight Masquerade is already still in stock at the Pokemon Center, which has me a little bit upset, but I'm going to tell you right now, this Surging Sparks Elite Trainer box checks all of the boxes that Twilight Masquerade didn't. I think it's going to be an awesome set, just like Twilight Masquerade is. I think the promo cards that are in this are infinitely better than the promo cards in Twilight Masquerade. And just from an eye appeal, just from a display perspective, like this Surging Sparks Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer box just looks amazing. And if you haven't heard this, you probably have been sleeping under a poker rock, but Pikachu's kind of popular, right? So I think, and again, who knows how long it will be available. They could have printed this absolutely into oblivion, but I sleep better at night knowing that I already have my Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer box allotment ordered. And this is the biggest, I will be taking the biggest stake in this set that I have since 151. If you guys remember when 151 was coming up, I told you guys I'm going to take a huge position in it, which I did. And then these last couple sets, I've been, dinking and dunking. I haven't done anything big. I'm going to take a massive position in Surging Sparks. I'm very bullish on it, even without seeing the rest of the card lineup. Like, just seeing these 3 cards and knowing that it's going to have that awesome Terra Pikachu in there, that is enough for me to be able to say already I'm going to take a big position in it, and I'm super excited. And I wouldn't want to live with regret if I didn't have my pre-order in for those Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer boxes, and there's really no risk, right? They don't charge you until they ship it, so it doesn't hurt to go ahead, get your pre-orders in, have it reserved, and if you change your mind later down the road, you can always cancel it. So that's just a little bit of advice from old PikiPikaPapa here. Now, The final one that's on this list, and honestly, I didn't think this was going to be quite so controversial because, as I told you, I don't know, I just kind of live in my own little Poke world here. But this Crown Zenith Sea and Sky box, I picked a couple of them up at my local Sam's, and I thought they were awesome. Obviously, you get 14 Crown Zenith packs for $40. You will not find a better price anywhere out there. So I picked a couple of them up, and I had them on this video, and I was like, hey, I'm going to talk about it. But then I started reading that I guess it's sold out, and people are scalping it, and it's just, people are like, I don't know, rummaging through Sam's Clubs, buying it by the pallet. I don't know. All I'm going to say is Sam's Club does have a tendency to restock it. I own a couple of these. I have them in my hot hands. I will tell you the box is absolutely massive. I have it stacked on top of my Heavy Hitters collection boxes, and it is every bit as big as those, if not a little bit larger. So make sure if this is a buy and hold for you, you have the ability to actually set it aside because, man, it takes up a big space in my Poke closet. But I do think this is an awesome product. My only concern, and it does keep me up just a little bit at night, my only concern is Crown Zenith just does not seem to go away. It is an epic set with amazing cards. I mean, it is one of the most fun sets to open as far as I'm concerned in recent memory. I can sit with my kids and just open Crown Zenith all day long, and they are so fired up because you get so many hits, and it's just such a deep and beautiful set. But again, I'm an investor, right? I'm a collector. I want things that I think are going to appreciate over the long term, and supply certainly can have a downward pressure effect on that. And if Crown Zenith continues to be printed, and if it continues to never go away, I think that it's going to be hard for it to grow over time. I mean, you can look at, I'm not comparing it, but I mean, you can look at, you know, Shining Fates, right? You can still get that on the Pokemon Center right now. So anyways, I'm very, very excited for this box. I am suddenly feeling very fortunate that I got it. I'm hoping that it's restocked so that all of you out there can get it who haven't. And I just think it's an awesome investment. And I think the price per pack, you absolutely can't beat it. So that's it. Super narrow list this month, right? Like I never make a list because I'm like, oh, I got to have 5, I got to have 10 things that I'm going after. All I do is share very transparently with you what I'm looking at, what I'm going to be spending my money on, and what I'm super excited about in the month ahead. And this is it. So if you made it to the end of the video, if you thought this list was cool, give us a thumbs up. If you got questions or comments, drop them down below. And if you enjoyed it and you want more, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it if you do any of those things, but if you do all 3, you will be my absolute favorite of all time. So thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you so much for the watch, and I hope you have an epic one. I'll talk to you all soon, everybody. See you. Bye.